The lighthouse stood alone against the crashing waves. Its white paint had long since peeled away. The lantern room windows were shattered. Saltwater stains covered the stone tower. The keeper's house beside it leaned dangerously toward the cliffs. Locals called it the Ghost Light. No one had lived there in over 40 years. 19-year-old Ethan Walker bought it anyway. Not because he believed in ghost stories. Because it was the only place he could still afford. Only 2 months earlier, Ethan worked aboard a commercial fishing boat. He had grown up on the ocean. His father taught him to tie knots before he could ride a bicycle. His mother joked he learned tides before multiplication tables. Life wasn't easy, but the sea always provided. Then one violent autumn storm changed everything. 40-foot waves slammed into the fishing vessel. Steel cables snapped. The engine flooded. The captain ordered everyone into emergency rafts. By sunrise, the boat had disappeared beneath the Atlantic. Everyone survived. The company didn't. Without insurance, the small family-owned business declared bankruptcy. The crew received nothing. No final pay. No severance. No future. Ethan searched every harbor for work. Fishing fleets already had full crews. Shipyards weren't hiring. Marinas cut staff after the storm damage. Within weeks, his savings disappeared. His rented room followed. Everything he still owned fit inside an old pickup truck. A duffel bag, work boots, a weatherproof toolbox, and his late grandfather Samuel's brass sextant. Grandpa never sailed without it. As a child, Ethan spent countless evenings listening to Grandpa explain navigation. The sea hides many things. He would smile. But the shoreline hides even more. Ethan never understood what he meant. Until now. One rainy afternoon, while browsing county foreclosure listings at the public library, Ethan found an unusual property. Black Point Lighthouse. Keeper's house included. Minimum bid, $500. Most buyers avoided coastal structures. Repairs cost fortunes. Storm damage scared away investors. Yet something about the listing caught Ethan's attention. The lighthouse had originally been built in 1898. A renovation permit from 1956 mentioned structural reinforcement beneath the keeper's house. Not the tower. The house. That seemed unusual. Curious, Ethan opened Grandpa Samuel's old navigation journal. Pressed between 2 faded charts rested a newspaper clipping nearly 50 years old. Its headline read, "Historic Lighthouse, closed permanently." Grandpa had circled one paragraph. Original keeper's residence remained structurally sound. Beside it, he had written 4 words. The answers stayed ashore. 3 days later, Ethan became the owner. The first night felt strangely peaceful. Wind held around the tower. Waves exploded against black rocks below. Rain tapped softly across the leaking roof. He slept inside a sleeping bag beside the old stone fireplace. For the first time since losing everything, he actually felt hopeful. The following weeks became routine. Replacing broken windows. Repairing roof leaks. Cleaning decades of salt and sand. Local residents occasionally stopped by. Most smiled politely. An elderly woman shook her head. "My grandfather kept this lighthouse." "You knew the keeper?" She nodded. "He always said the house protected something more important than the light." "What?" She laughed. "He never told anyone." That sentence stayed with Ethan. One afternoon, while replacing damaged floorboards inside the keeper's study, he noticed something strange. The room dimensions didn't match the outside foundation. Nearly 4 feet had vanished somewhere. He measured again. Definitely hidden space. Excited, he searched every wall. Nothing. No doors. No loose panels. No obvious openings. Late that evening, he sat beside Grandpa's brass sextant. As moonlight reflected across its polished surface, he noticed tiny engraved markings he had never seen before. A compass rose. Below it, the outline of a lighthouse. One side of the instrument rotated farther than normal. Click! A tiny brass compartment opened inside the sextant. Hidden within rested an old iron key and one folded note. Grandpa's familiar handwriting immediately made Ethan smile. Never trust the obvious entrance. He looked around the study. Every wall appeared solid. Then his eyes settled on the massive stone fireplace. Unlike the rest of the house, the chimney projected unusually far into the room. Too far. He examined the stonework carefully. Near the hearth sat one granite block, slightly smoother than the others. Its center contained a tiny keyhole, exactly matching Grandpa's iron key. His heart raced. The key turned effortlessly, deep inside the walls, Ancient gears slowly awakened. Heavy stones shifted. Dust drifted from overhead beams. Then the entire fireplace silently rolled sideways along concealed tracks. Behind it stretched a narrow stone staircase descending beneath the lighthouse. Cool sea air drifted upward. Ethan grabbed his flashlight. At the bottom of the staircase stood a beautifully preserved underground chamber. Oak shelves lined every wall. Leather journals. Navigation charts. Engineering drawings. Brass instruments. Everything perfectly organized. At the center rested a magnificent captain's desk. One envelope lay neatly on top. Across the front appeared 5 handwritten words. Only after the storm passes. Ethan slowly picked up the envelope. His hands trembled. Because suddenly the abandoned lighthouse everyone believed was only another forgotten ruin wasn't simply an old coastal property anymore. It was the final destination of a mystery Grandpa Samuel had quietly prepared years before Ethan ever lost everything at sea. And whatever waited inside that envelope was important enough to remain hidden until the exact moment Ethan needed a new course for his life. Ethan carefully opened the envelope. Inside rested a handwritten letter. Beneath it lay several weathered navigation journals, rolled coastal maps, a brass keyring, and a small wooden box sealed with wax. He unfolded the letter. "My dear Ethan, if you've reached this room, then life has already taught you the sea's hardest lesson. Storms don't ask whether you're ready." He smiled sadly. Grandpa Samuel always had a way of saying exactly what mattered. The letter continued. "What matters isn't what the storm takes. It's what you decide to build afterward." Ethan slowly looked around the hidden chamber. Every shelf had been meticulously organized. The journals covered nearly 60 years. He opened the first. It wasn't simply a lighthouse log. It documented dozens of coastal rescue projects, storm damage repairs, harbor rebuilding efforts, navigation improvements. Then something unusual caught his attention. Every project ended with the same sentence. "A share returned to the Harbor Trust." Curious, Ethan unlocked one of the oak cabinets. Inside rested business agreements, small partnership contracts, ownership certificates. Grandpa Samuel had quietly helped struggling boat builders, marine engineers, lighthouse restorers, harbor mechanics, and fishing families rebuild after disasters. Instead of charging for his help, he accepted tiny ownership percentages in their businesses. Most eventually succeeded. Those small shares quietly grew for decades. Another cabinet held patent certificates, innovative dock stabilization systems, storm-resistant mooring equipment, navigation safety devices, coastal rescue inventions. Many remained licensed to maritime manufacturers. The royalty agreements were still active. Ethan slowly shook his head. Grandpa hadn't hidden money. He had hidden decades of practical wisdom invested in ordinary people. Then he noticed another heavy steel door concealed behind a rack of nautical charts. Its brass nameplate read only 2 words. Harbor House. The old brass keyring fit perfectly. The door slowly opened. Beyond it stretched an astonishing underground workshop carved directly into the coastal rock beneath the lighthouse. Massive oak workbenches filled the center. Marine engineering stations lined one wall. Boat-building tools rested beside precision machine equipment. Navigation laboratories. Chart-making tables. Woodworking areas. Metal fabrication shops. Everything required to design, repair, and improve life at sea existed beneath one roof. Natural light entered through hidden sea caves where waves gently reflected sunlight onto the stone ceilings. At the center stood Grandpa's favorite navigation table. An old computer waited beside it. A flash drive carried one handwritten label. "Final bearing." Ethan inserted it. The screen flickered. Grandpa Samuel appeared. Older, gray-haired, still wearing his weathered captain's sweater, still holding the brass sextant. "Hello, Ethan." His familiar voice echoed softly through the workshop. "If you're watching this, then the ocean carried you exactly where you needed to be." Ethan quietly laughed. "That sounds like you." Grandpa smiled. "When people looked at this lighthouse, they saw an old building. I saw a safe harbor. Historic photographs filled the screen. Young fishermen repairing boats. Teenagers learning navigation. Veterans rebuilding engines. Families restoring storm-damaged docks. Entire communities working together after hurricanes. This lighthouse never protected ships. It protected people." He gently placed the brass sextant on the navigation table. "I learned something after every storm. Waves destroy structures. They don't destroy character. His expression became serious. If these investments make you financially secure, I'm grateful. But don't mistake security for purpose. He looked directly into the camera. Keep these workshop doors open. Teach young people. Help working families. Make every storm easier for the next generation. The recording slowly faded away. Silence filled the underground workshop. Ethan remained standing, not thinking about millions, thinking about direction. For the first time since the fishing boat sank, he realized losing everything had carried him somewhere entirely unexpected. Over the following months, maritime attorneys verified every document, every partnership agreement, every patent, every royalty contract. Everything proved authentic. Grandpa Samuel's careful investments across coastal industries had quietly grown into an extraordinary portfolio worth many millions. The royalty income alone guaranteed financial security. Developers immediately contacted Ethan. Luxury resort companies wanted the Lighthouse property. Private investors offered enormous sums. He declined every offer. Instead, Ethan established the Samuel Walker Coastal Skills Foundation. The lighthouse was completely restored. The underground harbor house reopened exactly as Grandpa intended. Young fishermen learned modern navigation alongside traditional seamanship. Boat-building apprentices trained beside retired master craftsmen. Marine mechanics rebuilt engines. Students designed safer rescue equipment. Coastal engineers developed better storm protection systems. Families rebuilding after disasters received practical training instead of temporary charity. The lighthouse, once abandoned, became the busiest educational center on the coastline. 10 years later, visitors traveled from across the country. School groups climbed the restored lighthouse tower. Fishing captains volunteered as instructors. Retired Coast Guard officers mentored young sailors. The old keeper's house became a maritime museum celebrating generations of ordinary people who protected one another. One autumn afternoon, a documentary crew arrived. The interviewer stood beside the massive stone fireplace. "So, this is the fireplace that changed your life?" Ethan smiled. In a way. What exactly was hidden behind it? The interviewer expected pirate treasure, gold coins, smuggled valuables. Instead, Ethan led him into the underground harbor house. Young apprentices carefully built wooden boats. Marine engineers tested new safety equipment. Navigation students studied coastal charts beside experienced captains. The workshop buzzed with quiet purpose. Ethan looked proudly across the room. The fireplace wasn't protecting treasure. It was protecting knowledge. The interviewer lowered his microphone. So the fortune wasn't hidden beneath the lighthouse. Ethan reached into his pocket. He still carried Grandpa's brass sextant every day. The fortune began here. He gently held up the instrument. But it grew because one man believed helping people become stronger was the safest investment anyone could ever make. Outside, evening sunlight illuminated the restored lighthouse. Its bright beacon swept across the ocean once again. Fishing boats safely entered the harbor below. Children laughed while exploring the keeper's house. Students carried newly built navigation equipment toward waiting vessels. The lighthouse no longer stood as a monument to the past. It guided people toward the future. Because behind that hidden stone fireplace wasn't simply a fortune worth millions. It was a lifetime of mentorship, craftsmanship, resilience, and quiet generosity. And in the end, the greatest thing Grandpa Samuel ever taught Ethan wasn't how to survive a storm at sea. It was how to become the lighthouse someone else would one day need when their own world was lost in the darkness.